special guests and speakers to select a language. Everyone must select a language. Do not stay in default off. Thank you. Estamos ofreciendo interpretación en español en vivo y en directo durante esta sesión. Si desea escuchar traducción en español, por favor presione el botón de interpretación al pie y a la derecha de su pantalla Zoom. Verá el icono de un globo terráqueo. Seleccione Spanish. Y si está uniéndose a nosotros vía Zoom en su teléfono móvil e inteligente, presione más o los 3 puntitos al pie y a la derecha de su pantalla. Seleccione Interpretación de idiomas y elija Español para poder disfrutar de la traducción en español. Todos deben seleccionar un idioma. Invitamos a nuestros panelistas y oradores que a la misma vez seleccionen un idioma. Todos debemos seleccionar un idioma. No se quede en apagado predestinado. Gracias.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yoli Garcia. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Yoli Garcia, and I am with the Wilson Mills Alumni Association. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Today's town hall is brought to you by a coalition of grassroots. We are community nonprofit organizations and local small businesses. Today, you will hear from our partners, the El Sereno Community Land Trust, Inner City Struggle, El Sereno Historical Society, United Caltrans Tenants, El Sereno Stallions, Holy Grounds Coffee and Tea, and the Wilson Mills Alumni Association. We thank all of our partners, and we are grateful to have local leaders and representatives participating as panelists. Also, our special thanks to County Supervisor District 1, Hilda Solis, for connecting and meeting with us. I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the attendance of Troy Carvajal, Field Deputy with the 51st District Assembly Member, Wendy Carrillo. A big thank you to Elisa Hernandez for her work and dedication in analyzing the survey data. Many thanks also to our interpreter, Edgar Maldonado. Thank you all. We are delighted to have all of you. Welcome. Next slide, please. So now, before we get started, I would like to go over the structure of our meeting so that everyone knows what to expect. This is our agenda here. I just did the welcome, and briefly I will start with our story of how we got to be here today. We're also excited to then share about the El Sereno community survey results and highlights. In this part, our partners will share the findings of our survey categories. After, we will have our panelists speak to the data and answer questions from the survey. At the conclusion, we will have our raffle drawing for 2 lucky individuals who completed the survey. So let's go ahead and get started. Our story started with the Wilson Mills Alumni Association mission statement. Our mission, the Alumni Association's mission is to support and augment the current and future academic successes and extracurricular endeavors of the students and community of Woodrow Wilson High School. The Wilson Mills Alumni Association aspires to help foster the preservation of treasured alumni relationships and provide opportunities to develop new friendships. Following our mission and having the challenges of the pandemic led us to gather community partners, and we began our journey. With our partners, we planned our first town hall in November, where we had listening sessions to bring the El Sereno community together and identify most pressing issues. We also welcome newly appointed Councilmember Kevin De Leon. We committed to launching an El Sereno community survey that we co-created and promoted digitally, and we also posted at some of the open businesses in El Sereno. So special thanks to those businesses that helped us promote by having our flyer posted about the survey. Son of a Vet, La Cocina, Mobile Coffee, Food for Less, Big Saver, Choice Burgers, El Rancho Market, and Miss Succulents. Thank you so much. The survey was open from December 2020 to February 2021. We collected 247 surveys, and we recognize that there's a digital divide amongst age and language. And we are taking the results as a good start to begin conversations about the future of El Sereno. Here you could see our journey through this timeline. In October, we had Council Member Kevin De Leon appointed. In November is when the Wilson Muse Alumni Association decided that following our mission statement, we needed to support our students, our families, our community of Wilson, and with identifying their needs and helping them support through the struggles that they were going. So December, so we had our first town hall in November. December through February, we had the survey. February through April, we were analyzing the data, organizing for today's meeting, and here we are today to share that data with you. So as you can see, it's been more than a few months working towards uplifting El Sereno during this unprecedented time. So without any further delay, we will move to the survey. Jennifer Maldonado, my fellow Wilson Muse Alumni Association board member, will give you an overview of the survey.
Hi, everyone. So just to kind of break down what we asked our community around particular topics. So we asked 31 questions, a mix of qualitative and quantitative questions around demographics, quality of life, education and recreation, arts and culture, health and social emotional support, public safety, and businesses. So in terms of who filled out the survey, we had 247 participants, including 5 Spanish. So like Yoli mentioned, we do recognize that there is a digital divide amongst young people and our fairly elder community, as well as our monolingual Spanish speaking and other non-English like communities. In terms of the age distribution, the biggest group with 49% was between the ages of 30 and 49, following ages 18 to 29 with 18%. We asked in terms of ethnicity, predominantly folks identified as Hispanic, Latinx, 16 identified as white, and 13 unknown, 6% Asian, 1% mixed, 1% Native American, and 1% African American. We also asked about education attainment and their particular connection to El Sereno. So majority of the folks that filled out the survey had attained a certain degree of education, higher education. So 26% bachelor's degrees, 21% graduate degree, 15% some college. And then in terms of college degree unknown, 14%. Middle school, shout out to our middle school students, 9%, high school diploma 8, unknown 4, associate degree 2%, and elementary 1%. In terms of the connection that folks had to El Sereno, half of the folks reside, so they live in El Sereno, and the other half either go to school in El Sereno or participate in recreational or work. And I'll go ahead and pass it off to my colleague Sua from the El Sereno Community Land Trust.
Hello, thank you, JMO. So among the questions that we asked, we were really interested in understanding what folks were experiencing as far as being able to pay their housing. And so what we found was that about 15% of folks are having a hard time. And so that's a really good indication of about how much we may need to be able to provide outreach to folks at El Sereno so they can tap into the current resources that are available for rent relief in COVID. And so, you know, those resources are needed by at least 15% of folks, which is really important because, you know, rents are unaffordable everywhere. So if folks end up not being able to stay in place because of their inability to pay rent or mortgage. They may need to leave really far from the area and be displaced as a result of. So that just gives us a really good indication of how much we have to work. And for instance, as an organization, the Land Trust is providing resource guidance for folks that need to tap into that rent relief. Next slide, please. Of those who rent, the majority of the folks that responded to our surveys are not, I'm sorry, I mixed up my slide. Okay, let me move to this slide. I'm sorry, my slides got mixed up a little bit. So we asked folks about their sense of supportive services that are being provided to the our houseless neighbors. And many folks agreed that providing folks with wellness and mental health services, relocation services, and sanitary services were good things, right? Which are currently being provided. It would be interesting to understand the perspective of folks that are actually houseless, if they feel the same way, or maybe understand the nuances of what those services, how those services can look, so that we are ensure that we are weaving in cultural, that we are sensitive in weaving in and are being culturally sensitive to the way those services are being provided. What is interesting on this slide is that there is an indication that at least 13% of folks in the area, or of those that responded, were interested in having some community teach-ins in some open spaces about what types of services are being offered and how to access those services, and kind of ensure that people are better aware of how to respond and how to care for and how to have compassion for our houseless neighbors. Next slide, please. So current renter issues, although many surveys participants do not rent, of those that do rent, sorry, I'm trying to fix my notes here. Of those that do rent, most are not having issues with eviction, which is understandable. At the moment, we have eviction moratoriums, but you know, we anticipate that number is going to change. One thing that we found interesting about some of the questions that we asked in the respondents is that a lot of folks feel rent burden. They're paying more of their income on rent. And so that kind of doesn't correlate with the difficulty in paying rent. And so it's interesting because at this point, like, folks are not saying that if they pay 30% of those who responded, they don't feel rent burden. However, a lot of folks are rent burden according to having to pay more than 30%. And so while they're making ends meet, a lot of folks are still having to pay more than that 30%. And the other kind of interesting thing was that a lot of that unaffordability is sort of, you know, sort of juxtaposition to that there being a lot of vacant homes in the area, and they're publicly vacant homes. So it is going to be interesting to watch the development of how those homes are made accessible and affordable over time. The other sort of thing that we want to sort of keep an eye on is the difficulty with neighbors, the difficulty with landlords, only because we know that as time progresses, as evictions start kind of going underway, landlords may see themselves not being as easily able to evict folks because of non-rent payment. So they will start taking other avenues, and they will start kind of understanding how to peel off some of the other things and how to send notices about other kind of violations. So that also difficulty with landlords may change over time. Next slide, please. We asked folks about quality of food in the area, and the positive outcome is that most folks do think that they have not only a variety of quality of food, but it's also affordable. Most people said that they're able to both access quality and affordable food. So we do have quite a diversity of food offerings in El Sereno. And so that is reflected in folks' responses. what was the most positive thing that came out of the questions was that of those who access public food sources, a lot of people went to the LAUSD Grab and Go program. And so since the LAUSD is kind of looking to expand that, that's a good thing, because there was at least 16%, almost 20% of folks who are actually using that as a source of food. And so this is a good time now to pass it over to my colleague, Anna, who will talk about the educational piece.
Thank you, Sua. So hello, everyone. Anna Godoy, she, her, hers. And I'm going to be going over the education and recreational part of our survey. So let me change this. Okay. All righty. So when it comes to education and recreation, one of the key things that we found from the survey was that the biggest thing that was highlighted was the difficulty with online learning. As we know, with the pandemic, we've shifted onto virtual learning. And so although a portion of our folks who completed the survey did not have to do virtual learning, there were still about 74% of the folks that were impacted. So the biggest thing being having the working and learning space within their own homes. So that was about 16%. The second one was almost tied with having the space, is also having poor Wi-Fi connection or any connection at all in their homes. So there's about 4% of folks who do not have any Wi-Fi access at all. And just the difficulty of having to do learning in a virtual setting as well. So there was about 12% of folks who were having those difficulties. So really highlighting that during the pandemic, there's been a lot of difficulty with online learning from either space or also access to internet. And just to highlight, from a scale that we were having our questions be asked, the scale that we were utilizing, the highest kind of part of the scale was saying that a lot of folks were selecting the option that students were saying that the current quality of education was average to outstanding. So really just highlighting, how we've been pivoting during the pandemic and students still feeling supported during this time as well. And now I'm going to go ahead and start talking about recreational space. So the biggest thing that was highlighted is that we want more parks and open spaces. So more than half of the participants of the survey are asking for more of that open spaces. And the next set of questions went more into depth of what is it that they want to see in these open spaces, so or these green spaces. One of that being having recreational space for sports and kids to play around. So just making sure that there's places for children that could either play soccer, basketball courts, having trees, picnic areas, or exercise equipment. And this is coming directly from participants. It was open-ended questions. And in addition to that, they also want to make sure that these spaces are clean and well-maintained. So making sure that it's a safe area for their children to play, utilize, and enjoy, that it's clean, that there's no trash, there's no feces from animals. And just having that, again, that open space, being able to throw down a blanket to either have a picnic with their family or just to relax. And then lastly, the other key area that folks had uplifted was having shady tree areas. So again, making sure that there are just more trees within the vicinity, allowing for big trees that bring in a lot of shade, so large canopy trees, and then a space just for folks to sit and lay underneath the trees, especially during the summer, as a way for folks to escape the heat, and again, being able to relax under the trees. So those were some of the key highlights. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to George.
Thank you, Anna. So my portion of was arts and culture. And so we had a question about whether or not folks had participated in a socially distanced or online community event, during the past year. And as you could see, over half stated that they had been part of a socially distant or online event, which just shows that even though we had a pandemic and we had, things closed down, people still thought it was important for them to be part of our social events here in Sereno. Also, 9% stated that they had taken part in a car caravan, whether it was for the park event, whether for school, or whether it was for a community event. They had gone out and taken part in a caravan, as an event. And then 2% said that they tried to go online to be part of the event, but they couldn't log in or had trouble logging in, but they tried. So you also asked a follow-up question of how important it was to keep our traditional events here in Sereno. And over 2/3 said that it was very important to continue having our traditional community events in El Sereno. 21% stated that it was important, and 11% said it was somewhat important. If you add those three categories up, you get 98% stated that they wanted to keep our community events in El Sereno. Now, some of the events that we have here in El Sereno, back Anna, one more. Some of the events that we have here in El Sereno are like the Ascot Hills Kite Festival. We have the 4th of July Parade, 4th of July Fireworks Show, the Ascot Hills 5K, El Sereno Dia de los Muertos, El Sereno Christmas Tree Lighting Ceremony, as well as smaller ones such as the Veterans Day and Memorial Day events that we have here. So I just overall, people thought that keeping these events funded and maintained throughout the years is very important or important for our community to have. Next slide, Anna, please. You also asked about landmark preservation and recognition in our community. So as you know, we have a very old community with a lot of history, but very few landmarks have been preserved or recognized. So as you can see, and from our survey, the Farmdale Schoolhouse came out as #1 on the list of places people want to see preserved. Now, the Farmdale Schoolhouse is an iconic building here in El Sereno. It's part of our history. It was built in 1889. It's, I think, a very old community school, but yet it has not been recognized or preserved in any way. So just goes to show how much work there is to do. Another landmark is the Mazatlan Theater, which came in second. All Saints Church and the pedestrian tunnel on Pueblo came in tied for third. And the Edison Barn also came out on the survey as something that people want to see preserved. It's a over 100 years old barn, not very well known, but it's an iconic building that deserves our recognition. Other sites in El Sereno that people stated they wanted to see recognized or preserved was the El Sereno Community Garden, Elephant Hill, Veterans Monument. With Veterans Monument, there was also a lot of discussion about having that area cleaned up and used again for community events. Lately, the past couple of years, it's been used as for houseless folks as an encampment, and people thought they wanted to see that brought back and used as community events. So that was something that people want to see, I guess, funded and maintained. Also, we also had the flagpole on Eastern Huntington Drive as a spot that people want to see preserved and recognized as well. Overall, people want to see more markers of history in our community. They want to see our history preserved and also promoted. So that was something telling to see from the survey. Next slide. Thank you. For the arts and culture, we also asked what programs people wanted to see in our community for their youth, our families, our seniors. And so what we got was that for youth programs, people wanted to see after school learning programs. And these also, they wanted to see programs for youth so they could learn life skills. And just a place to have them socialize and come together, in a safe place. That was something for our youth that was resounding in our survey. Also for our seniors, they wanted to have more helpers for our seniors, and especially more outreach. Our seniors have been isolated for over a year now with the pandemic. So people wanted to see our senior folks helped out and outreach so they could come out and be part of our activities again. And there was also mention about intergenerational bonding, where the youth and our senior folks come together and take part in events together just to learn from each other. And that was pretty nice to hear as well. The arts program, people resoundingly said that they wanted to see a performing arts center at the park or somewhere, because the arts are important for our community, and overall just have more arts in our community, was something that was stated in the survey. So for the youth, senior, and arts programs, these were some of the things that stood out and people wrote in about. Next, I will send it over to my colleague, Angela, who will do the health and social and emotional support portion. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Angela from the El Sereno Community Land Trust. I'm going to be doing the health and social emotional support. We had asked participants, how have you and your family been impacted by COVID-19? And we looked at health insurance first. Majority of survey participants indicated that they do indeed have health insurance. So that was great news to us. 7%, however, said no, that they don't. 2% said that they need to enroll, and 1% is non-applicable. Knowledge of where to receive social emotional wellness resources. 76% said that they do not know where to receive social emotional wellness resources, so that we thought that that was really important. Where can we identify, who can we identify as people who can help those who are going through rough times, who are being impacted by COVID, and so on. 12% said yes, they do know where to get resources, and 12% said maybe. So next slide, please. And the impact from COVID-19 pandemic, respondents reported increased feelings of anxiety as being the most impactful during the pandemic. And so that's where the emotional support resources would help all of us. 30% said that they had increased feelings of anxiety. 18% said loss of wages or reduced hours. 16% said loss of employment. 9% said loss of loved ones. 7% said contracted the COVID-19. 6% reduced access to healthcare. 5% no direct impact. 3% said reduced access to food, and 3% said other. And we found that with all of this, there was loss of sleep, mild depression, and mild depression from families being separated. And that's just the qualitative report. And a restaurant owner had said, I am a restaurant owner and have experienced incredible stress related to maintaining my business as well as keeping my staff employed and safe. So I think that we definitely should look at those resources as much as we can. And I will pass it to Ruben.
Medics out there really looking at that side of it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Ruben Soriano, currently the Vice President for the El Sereno Stallions. My section covers public and safety. In the survey taking here in El Sereno, I'm happy to report that a majority of the survey participants reported that they feel safe here in El Sereno.
Typically, we want 3 game officials in every division of midgets.
Now, if you can see the graph here, 28% of people, the community forum said 28% people feel safe. And, there's 26% of there's safety community plans. That these are the things that are improving our public safety. There's also prevention. 26% of people in prevention resources, and information. There's 11% of information booths, and we reported that 8% other and 1% no answer.
Junior gremlin through
okay. Most responsive indicate that these programs or preventive resources would improve public safety. Can I get the next slide?
So I'm going to open that up for conversation and see what the thoughts of.
Okay, what are the main public safety concerns here in El Sereno? we've increased homelessness in our community. Somebody said that they feel very unsafe when walking through our neighborhood. Someone said that I have had my car damaged while driving down a Huntington Drive, and a homeless person was standing in the street throwing objects at the cars that are passing by. The issue is homeless encampments. My family has been exposed to naked people and seen drug use in broad daylight, and I don't want my child growing up and seeing this or on his way from school every day. And in the issue of community and gang violence, somebody said that the gangs are huge problems with problems with tagging, etc., gang activity, shootings, graffiti, violent robbery that have happened recently. There's an increase in gang violence.
So it's on average about
there's an increase in drug use. Somebody said that the crime from the drug addicts in 2018, I was stuck in the foot with a used syringe in Food for Less parking lot. There's too much meth in the area.
Sorry, I joined late.
And there's been a lot of theft and robbery. People commented that their catalytic converters were stolen and their cars were broken into. Thank you. Now I pass it on to my next person, is Eddie. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Again, I'd just like to start off by just thanking you for your time and just for joining us today. In regards to businesses in El Sereno, these were some of the responses, things that people would like to see, people that the type of businesses that they would like to see in El Sereno. Over the last year, we've seen several businesses come and go due to the pandemic, or just due to different financial difficulties, and we want to maintain, a lot of the businesses that we have. People reported, wanting to see more sports bars, food or restaurants, clothing stores, art galleries, gyms, grocery stores. Again, we were talking earlier about just limited grocery stores within El Sereno. So we would like to bring in more chains. Food businesses was one of the big responses. Recreational examples of this were arcades, movie theaters, laser tag, etc. Specialty shops, like ice cream. Again, just types of businesses that people reported wanting to see more of in El Sereno. Next slide. Again, as a business in El Sereno, what are your current needs? And again, just due to the limited responses, just a small representation of the businesses within El Sereno. Again, we felt that publicity needed to attract more customers was essential. Support from local and small businesses, and again, it's and speaking of city officials and so forth, I think the community has shown up to really support the small businesses during these times, but we would like to see more support coming from other agencies and city officials as well. Funding opportunities, again, I can't even begin to count how many grants I've applied for, never heard back from. So again, just making the process easier for small businesses, making opportunities available for small businesses, and even guidance or assistance with these different funding opportunities would be great, and just a great way to maintain and help the struggling businesses stay afloat during this time. Next slide. I'll pass it over to JMO for final thoughts.
So at the end of our survey, our very collaborative and detailed survey, we asked folks for their final thoughts. What is one issue you would like to see improved in El Sereno? And across the board, folks had mentioned addressing and providing services for our homeless community. One respondent mentioned we need to take care of our homeless population. They require resources, housing, food, safety. They have been left in the elements and people complain about them. In terms of our public spaces, folks had mentioned cleaning up streets, that there's a lot of trash in our streets. There's illegal dumping, there's litter and garbage. And a respondent had put, I love this little town and wish everyone felt the same way I do, proud to be here. Another theme that came up in this question was affordable housing and rent control. The housing market here is so unregulated that it is starting to become extremely unaffordable to live here. High rent costs needs to decrease. If not, a displacement will occur in El Sereno. Affordable housing and stop gentrification. And so these are just some of the final thoughts that we asked our neighbors, our residents, the folks that filled out this survey. And this is kind of like the last question of our survey, and I'll pass it back to Yoli for some highlights.
Thank you everyone for sharing the results of the survey. So here are some of the highlights of our survey. Educational quality throughout the pandemic has been average to outstanding. So we applaud LAUSD for providing that one-to-one device and hotspots for our students. We're proud of our local teachers, and happy Teacher Appreciation Day today to educators who are joining us today. We're very proud of your dedication, and to our students, we're very proud of your resiliency throughout this pandemic. A second highlight is that majority of the folks have healthcare coverage. And we're grateful for that. And we also recognize that the number one impact of the pandemic has been the increased feelings of anxiety. And there is a need of awareness of where to access social emotional support services. Our third highlight is that residents lack access to quality food. So we see the need for community gardens and open space for food markets. We hear our local small businesses and our residents in the need of more businesses, especially for quality food in our community. The fourth highlight, houselessness appears in pretty much all the categories except in education. It is the most pressing concern. The most pressing concern was the response from leadership in providing services to the unhoused population and the safety concern of community members because of mentally unstable population. So we know that this is a glimpse of issues impacting our community. We understand we are missing representation from our renters and houseless community, our Spanish monolinguals, our youth and elder communities in El Sereno. Our survey went out during the second wave of the pandemic when Los Angeles was the epicenter. So we know that it was a difficult time to collect survey. We recognize the digital divide. Our hopes are to uplift all of El Sereno and address the needs. To help us in meeting these goals, we have invited our panelists to speak to our survey results and answer a few questions. So I would like for you to help me to welcome our panelists today. We have LAUSD School Board Member, Monica Garcia. Welcome. We have Lincoln Heights and El Sereno Community of Schools Administrator, Pedro Avalos. We have Associate Vice President of Community and Local Government Partnerships, USC Community Relations, David Galaviz. And we also have from Council District 14, Kevin De Leon's, Council Member Kevin De Leon's. We have Chief of Staff, Jennifer Barraza. So all of you, thank you and welcome. Thank you for taking the time to learn about the needs and vision of our El Sereno community. Okay. We will follow the order of introductions. Each panelist will have about 7 minutes to speak to the survey results and answer questions. The questions came from resonating points of the survey and questions asked during the town hall registration. So we will go ahead and welcome school board member Monica Garcia. She will go first. We will allow board member Monica Garcia to speak to the survey. And then we have 2 questions for both board member Monica Garcia and also Pedro Avalos. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So welcome board member Monica Garcia, and I will give you a moment to go ahead and get started, but I will first ask the questions to both you and to local school administrator Pedro Avalos. The 2 questions that we have for you, the first question is, what are the district's plans to address the learning loss? Question 2, what resources can our community schools offer to the community? So I will send it off to board member Monica Garcia and then to Pedro Avalos. Thank you.
Awesome. Buenas noches. Thank you all for being here and for supporting the El Sereno family of schools. So one, I just want you to know today the board approved a calendar and a group of funds directed for any school that wants to increase the time allotted by 10 days. So one, we're putting more resources to the local level. And 2, we're recognizing that not all the communities were hit. The trauma was not hit evenly across the district. So we know that some schools where housing, where job loss and education have been impacted, they need 2nd and 3rd scoops. What was the other question you said? What are we doing to address learning loss? And then I'll just say we are also supporting our employees. I'm really glad that the district has been working with every teacher and support staff person, putting more mental health services in our school site, because we know we have lived a traumatic year. But we also know our children are resilient and brilliant, as are our staff. And I'm really glad that Pedro Avalos is here because he is our leader on the ground. Mr. Avalos, I will let you answer a piece of that question.
Thank you, Monica. Again, my name is Pedro Avalos. I'm the community school administrator. I represent 13,000 students for Lincoln Heights and El Sereno. And I want to give you a little bit some numbers and so you know how resilient really our students are. During the pandemic, we had 93% attendance rate, which was one of the highest in local district East. Currently in the hybrid model, we have over 1,400 students coming to our schools, with El Sereno Middle School being one of the highest of the district with a little bit under 100 students. We also have, for our elementaries, we have the highest represented in El Sereno for local district East, which is about 1,278 students, which is 70% of the ones that committed to return. So that speaks to not only to the students' resiliency, but also to the teachers and how welcoming they have been and throughout this process. To answer the question in regards to services, also want to announce that the grab and go is still on its way. It's still there. It's still here for our children, for our parents. So they would have to go to the schools. It's no longer at Wilson High School, but they can go to the individual schools to get that very necessary food that they're in need of. In regards to the homeless, we do represent about 210 students. It's spread out evenly between elementary and secondary, and we do have resources for them. They have been the students that we're been focusing on since the beginning of this, with items that we're providing and continuing to provide in regards to social emotional learning and backpacks and things like that we also have for them as they return during the summer, which I also want to talk about in regards to the learning loss. There will be a summer school program. Unfortunately, we could not extend the year, but we will have a 4-week summer school program that's open for K to 8. And in high school, there will be a credit recovery program for them as well. But I also want to talk to you about a coordination of student and community service that we've been speaking to St. John's and the Wellness Center that's right behind Lincoln Heights High School, which also represents El Sereno. We've been communicating with them, and I know you probably already know that Lincoln High School has a vaccination center. And once they're done, we're going to go into our third meeting where we're discussing not only district services, but community services and services that USC and St. John can provide to the community of El Sereno, with the ultimate goal of creating a service catalog per se, and finding better ways to communicate with everybody within the community. So that's our big picture moving forward once everything kind of settles down. But those are the things that we're trying to do to bring services back to the community.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here with us. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our community? Please.
Yes, please. So I want to say that we worked hard today. All our schools are open. We need your help in keeping them open. So I'm really glad that Los Angeles is now approaching yellow or distinguished as yellow, but we need to keep the COVID spread low. And we are asking everyone who comes onto our campus to be COVID tested in our system. And that's student and employees on a weekly basis. So I just want you to know that's one of the preventions that we are doing. Secondly, I have to just talk about two schools in particular. So one, Bravo has been selected as a California Distinguished School again. Cheers to the Knights. And our project at Wilson for the Visual and Performing Arts project is approved for design. And this year we will be asking the board to approve its construction. So I'm going to welcome all the voices from El Sereno that want to see the space for arts education to complete that W. And Mr. Martinez and all the mules have been very involved in helping us get that project to the place where it's at right now. And that is a very good thing for our community, for our students, for jobs in the area. And I'm looking forward to fund it this year. Thank you all very much. Pedro, anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I think you've said it all. We are very proud of everybody in El Sereno and Lincoln Heights as well, but we welcome everything that you're doing. We want to be partners in this with you. So I'm really, really happy that I'm part of this and excited to be part of this moving forward.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
I'm sorry, one
Go
more.
ahead. Go ahead.
You want to spread the word. Vaccinations are low in our community. So LA Unified, we want to make sure our kids who are 16, 17, and 18 get access to those vaccines. And we want to make sure that everyone in the community has access. We're on our way. We're not there, but we could absolutely use all of your help. So gracias.
Yes, thank you. We're very pleased with LAUSD stepping up. As I said earlier on, that one-to-one device, the hotspots, has really helped out our students. As an alumni from Wilson, looking forward to the Visual and Performing Arts project, not only because the school needs it, but we need programs for our youth. That was one of the highlights from our survey. We need prevention programs, and the arts it's wonderful. So thank you for that and everything that the district is doing. So thank you so much for being here with us, and thank you for participating. All right, our next panelist, we have USC USC Health and Science Campus Vice President David Galaviz. Thank you so much for being here. So same format. Welcome to speak to the highlights, to results of the survey. And we have this question here for you. What resources and programs can your office offer to address some of the data results, such as social emotional wellness, homelessness, youth, senior community programs?
Great, thank you, Yoli. I'm very happy to be here with all of you. I have to say that I have a unique affinity for El Sereno. I'm a Boyle Heights kid. I grew up on the other side of Soto and Valley. But however, my wife and I chose to raise our family in El Sereno. El Sereno, at 2932 Covina Street, and we lived there for 11 years, and 3 of our kids were born and raised there. So when you talk about places like Son of Avet and Holy Grounds, we literally used to walk there from our house. We were so close. You know, what I will say is regarding the, oops. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I lost everybody for a second there. You know, for us at USC, what this survey points out is a need for us to take what I would call a spiderweb approach. All these issues that were raised during the survey kind of call attention and call the need for all large organizations like USC, you know, the leadership of Monica Garcia at the school board, the leadership of Kevin De Leon at the city council, Hildo Solis's leadership, and all of your leadership to look at how we can bridge the gap and come together and resolve these issues. From a university perspective, COVID-19 really taught us that we really need to look at what we're doing and how we engage. And I'm happy to say, you know, Monica raised a big issue with the low vaccines in our neighborhoods. One of the things we did was we established a vaccine center over in Lincoln Park that ran for about 3 months, 2-3 months. And now that it's starting to wind down because there's so many other clinics. If you were vaccinated at Dodger Stadium, chances are you were vaccinated by a USC pharmacist. We also developed one of the first and largest food distribution centers in the East Side. And Dulce Acosta on my team, who's on the call here with us and represents us in our neighborhoods, really played a key role in that. But also, just from a USC perspective, what I do have to say is, you know, at USC, it's a big responsibility. We're the largest private employer in the city of Los Angeles, and one of the top 5 in the county. So that's massive. And when people think of USC, they often think of the campus in South LA over on you know, north of or south of downtown. However, we have a huge presence here in the East Side. We've been at the intersection of Boyle Heights, Lincoln Heights, El Sereno for over 130 years, since 1885. Many people, when they think of USC, they think county and USC are the same thing. However, our health science campus, which is right next to county USC, we provide the doctors for the county services, but our schools of medicine, we have 3 clinics, our schools of pharmacy, dentistry, and a lot of other programs are there. So we're always looking for ways that we can engage the community. And one of the biggest things we can do, given that we are an academic institution, is we run a program called the McMorrow Neighborhood Academic Initiative, which literally takes students starting in El Sereno Middle School. Not only El Sereno, there's 15 schools in South LA and the East Side. And if these kids are in the program and they go through 4 years of intensive academic training at Wilson and Lincoln, once these kids graduate, and if they get into, when they apply to USC, their application fees waived. If they get into USC, they get a 4.5-year free scholarship. If they decide to go somewhere else, then USC puts their financial aid package together. And just in terms of numbers, we want to take, as we say, we want to take the Tigers and Mules, and we want to convert them into Trojans. That's our goal for this academic program. In the last 2 years alone, in 2020 rather, we had 43 students from Lincoln and high school graduate, 12 of which are at USC, 2 I'm proud to say are at UC, 5 went to community colleges to start, and another 21 went to CSUs. So our goal is really to look at how we develop a college-going culture, because again, we want to, you know, we know our students can do it. We know they're capable, we know they can compete, and we want to do what we can to help them compete, not only at USC, but at other universities across the state and across the country. We also are heavily involved with looking at how we can develop programs to hire locally, because we feel it's not, K through 12 education is one thing. There's also adult education that we're heavily involved in. There's also a number of training programs that we're engaged in. And we're also developing a buy local program for South LA and for the East Side, where we wanted to, again, as I mentioned, we're one of the largest private employers in the city and county of LA. We're looking at what we can do as a university to provide more contracting opportunities to our local businesses. Now we have programs where if you're a small business and you're in El Sereno and you're looking for contracting opportunities, we can connect you with contracting opportunities at the university for catering and other types of services. We want to expand that and look at what we can do to really promote your businesses, especially now post-COVID-19. So going forward, from our perspective, we really would like to stay connected with you all. We'd really like to talk to you more about programming. We also have programs such as street medicine, which actually doctors go out to homeless encampments, and they not only provide services, but they also provide medical, emergency medical services, but they also try to get those folks on the street into temporary housing. So again, for us, it's a spiderweb approach, and we feel that we really want to continue to work with you all going forward to help develop programs and partnerships. So we'd love to continue the discussion going forward.
That's awesome to hear, David. And you touched on a lot of points that, our residents are, concerned about. So it's great to hear that we'll be in communication. I'm sure that our residents, our community would like to know how to get a job. You're one of the biggest employers. So how can they get a job? Students, thank you for supporting our students and education. One of the audience is asking, the scholarship, is it a full ride? Does it include housing for the NAI?
Yeah, it includes housing, and it includes books, and it includes a scholarship. So yeah, that's all a part of it.
Thank you. Yes, and I personally know some of the students that were at Wilson that are now at USC that are part of the NAI program. So very happy to have that program here.
Only one more thing, just real quick, is for us at USC, when people think of colleges and universities, they think of rivals. And I do have to say, like, for example, UCLA is one of our closest partners. Cal State LA, great partner. ELAC, we all work together. And for us, it's not only about going to USC. Of course, we'd love to see that. But if there are students that we know want to go to Berkeley, like Monica Garcia, or we know want to go to Occidental or another university, we look at ways that we could help them through that process as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's important for our community members to know that it's not just to USC that you support them, even in other universities. It's that higher learning of advocating. So thank you so much for that. We do have one more question for you, David. USC Health Science Campus's role in advocating. I think you touched upon some, but anything else that you could add to most impacted in the area?
Yes, we have a ton of faculty that are out doing community work. We have so I'd be happy to take questions offline. For example, if you know someone that needs homeless services, or you want to find out about, if you're an organization that's hosting a health fair and want pharmacists to come in and provide services, we can contact our faculty to help with that process.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, homelessness is a big concern here. And so I'm glad that you are sharing with us what you can provide, and, just connecting with our elected representatives in other jurisdictions. I think doing that together, I think that's what we want to accomplish. So thank you so much for sharing that. And now, we know a little bit more what we have there to help us meet our goals. Thank you, David. Any last final thoughts?
Again, I'm going to try to put my contact info in the chat, because for us, we want to stay connected. We're like USC, like any organization, is not going to solve everything, but by working together and keeping communication open, we can go a long way.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much, David. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next panelist. We have Chief of Staff Jennifer Barraza from Council District 14, representing Kevin De Leon's office. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So same format, if you could just speak to the results of the survey, and I will read the first question just for the purposes of time. The first question is, El Sereno's pride comes from our traditional events, historic landmarks, and open space. How is your office addressing to preserve, protect landmarks and open green space? What support can we see in the future for traditional events? Okay, so that's a loaded question. So let me break it up into a few buckets so that we can kind of move through it. So first, thanks to everyone for having me here. I think I'm excited. I know the council member, we were trying to figure out who can make it today, and there was another Zoom about Valley Boulevard.
Hubo otro Zoom sobre Valley Boulevard, entonces estamos trabajando juntos. Estoy contenta de estar aquí y contestar la pregunta. Ahora, la preservación de puntos importantes de terreno definitivamente es importante en la comunidad.
I think a lot of times people see old buildings and they're like, oh, it's time to knock them down and build something new. But there are, I think, some buildings here in El Sereno that should be designated for preservation. El Sereno is over 100 years old, as you guys all know, and so it's one of the oldest communities in LA. And so a few of the landmark designations that the council members looking into do include Edison Barn and the historic Farmdale Schoolhouse. which I know were listed in some of the results from that you guys conveyed earlier. So that's something that we are, I think Julio, who is also, I think, on the Zoom, and the council member have been working on closely to try to figure out the process for that piece. And I was interested to see that there were a few others on that list. So I think we can take that back to the council member and share that information with him. But absolutely, I think that for all of us, the preservation of landmarks are important for the council member as well. And so I think that this is some of the work that he's been doing and that he will do as time goes on the issue of parks and green space. So you guys, if you know the council member, you know that he's a huge proponent in building new parks in neighborhoods that don't usually have them. And in fact, some of the work that he did in Sacramento, a big pillar of it was he was the proposition of the author of Proposition 68, which was the Parks, Environment, and Water Act of 2018. A lot of you might have voted for it, where $4 billion was allocated for parks and water infrastructure across the state. And there's about $650 million in competitive funding for local parks. And so that source was actually the way that we were able to get the expansion for the El Sereno Arroyo playground. And so, you know, the council member and our El Sereno staff are excited to kind of work with you guys to help identify additional locations. Obviously, green space is important for him, and to kind of identify these opportunities to improve green spaces like Elephant Hill that I think was also brought up earlier. And then on the issue, I think of
traditional events.
Traditional events, yes, traditional events. So you know what, I can tell you that we're all itching to go back to traditional events. The other day, actually, council member was at the El Sereno night market. And he calls me after and he goes, Jen, because I was back out and it was so good. Like I could talk to people and he was super excited. So I think that definitely he's itching, just like the rest of us, to kind of get back out there and hold these events. Obviously, COVID has kind of shut everything down and we want to be cautious, right? Because like the board member said, we want to make sure that our numbers stay low so that kids can go back into school and everything kind of slowly return to normalcy. But, you know, obviously we want to continue the community events that actually the council members, I've accompanied the council member over the last few years here in El Sereno so, you know, Independence Day Parade, the, you know, the veterans tributes at the memorial. So, you know, we all know that the importance of these events. And so making sure that we continue them is important as we kind of move forward. And, you know, right now we've been kind of figuring out what we're doing for 4th of July. And I know that this community is used to like a large fireworks extravaganza. Unfortunately, I think that, you know, we're in a situation with the pandemic where there's still a little bit of uncertainty, but we are actually looking into what a little bit more downscaled events could look like for 4th of July. So families could still have the opportunity to come out and share with one another in a socially distant, safe outdoor space. So I hope that answers all your questions.
Yes, thank you so much. So yeah, and the last one that you touched about the firework, we definitely you know, enjoy the fireworks show. We would like for that to continue. We understand because of the pandemic, there's certain things we can't do, but you know, hopefully when we, you know, things return to more normal, we will be able to have more of those traditional events.
I can tell you that as long as I'm the chief, we will make sure that in the future we have that happens.
Awesome. And then I'm glad to hear that looking to preserve, look into the preservation of Edison Bar and the Farmdale Schoolhouse. I think it'd be great for to collaborate on that and work on that together.
Yep.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned about the night market and that the council member was there last week. You know, that is one of our one of the needs, you know, I mean, produce, quality food, but I know the night market most of the vendors are like food and some goodies. So hopefully we are thankful that the council member has supported the El Sereno street vendors and that we hope that that will continue and hopefully expand it, possibly even in other areas in El Sereno and have you know, a farmer's market, because that is, I think that is what some of the community members are asking for, you know, more quality food access. So that would be great. So thank you on those points. Question 2, is your office thinking of a community safety plan, or what community safety plan might you be working on already? Preventive programs to address public safety and prevention programs, specifically the concerns were homelessness, also the youth and the seniors prevention programs for them.
Yep. So, I think that the council member wants to make sure that all of our constituents in El Sereno feel safe. Prevention, I think, in his eyes, is kind of one of the main pillars of the public safety work that we're doing. So our office is working closely with the GRID program, the Mayor's Gang Reduction and Youth Development Program, and then also with our partners at Barrio Action, Family and Youth Services here in El Sereno. We're working very closely with them. And in fact, we're continuing to up our investment through the city's reinvestment funds into Barrio Action so that we can continue that work and expand it so that we can reach more kids. I mean, I think that the council member wants to move away from the traditional thinking of like labeling youth as like you're a gang member and then you push them kind of closer. It almost become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I think that he believes strongly in an intervention model so that you can, reduce the risk and work with them, not just as individuals, but with their family and their peers, and making sure that they're busy, right, with productive activities and the services that they need. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a challenge through the pandemic, right? Starting in October and then kind of going through the pandemic to kind of like really, a lot of the work that these organizations do, like Barrio Action, is a lot of in person, right? It involves kind of having kids come in and being able to see them and talk to them and those kind of dynamics. And the pandemic has actually made that really difficult to continue. And so we're hoping that as we slowly but surely kind of get out of this pandemic, we're going to be able to see a lot more of the in-person work with youth services and prevention that we were seeing before the pandemic. And I think additionally, like upping and restarting kind of the programs like the cheer programs, right? The Stallions football, like all of that kind of kept our kids busy is so important. So I think, again, the prevention is a huge key. Our office also works really closely with the SLO, the LAPD department to kind of stay in communication, obviously before, but we'd like to kind of make sure that we are targeting our students and our kids before we kind of get to a situation where we need to involve PD. And so that's kind of, I think, our core pillar here. And I know that there's obviously issues around the homelessness issue, right? And a lot of folks that have things, when folks are unhoused, unfortunately people prey on them and there's a lot that happens, right? It's like a cycle. And so also making sure our office has been kind of leaning in on the topic of homelessness, especially in El Sereno. The council member has been very focused to ensure that we are finding solutions, concrete solutions, to get folks off the street so that we can kind of minimize the kind of some of the stuff that happens when folks are living on our streets.
Yes, so most people that took the survey felt safe in El Sereno. However, the crimes that were mentioned or the public safety concerns pretty much have to do with the homelessness, the unhoused population. So I know that the median was being cleared. Can you give us an update on how that's coming along? I know as residents, we drive by there so we see it, but yeah. What insight do you have for us? Yeah. And I'm sorry, wasn't a question listed there, but if you can.
Oh, it's okay. Absolutely. So we have spent, I think, when we first started, one of the first motions that we introduced was around home key. And we had, we came in October. In December, we were closing escrow on 2 sites on Huntington that were specifically supposed to be or are to house folks that were experiencing homelessness here in El Sereno. And that happened, and we're so excited. And we've been doing the work. Honestly, our team in El Sereno, and frankly, even members of our team from Bull Heights, from downtown LA, have come to kind of help in this process, because it really does take a village, and it is a lot of work. And over the last few months, since the beginning of the year, LASA and our other community, Exodus and our other community partners, have been doing continuous outreach to the folks in the median. Kind of even the council member, like I went out with the council member a few times. He's gone out a few more. We've been able to engage with the unhoused folks there and kind of explain to them, here's our plan, right? Here's what's coming. And so I think so far we've had a really big success with being able to move the majority of folks that were on the median into these properties on Huntington, the Tita's Inn and the Super 8. And there are a few folks that we continue to work with that we still have beds available for. So we are continuing to work with them, right? We have to, like the council member says, we can't give up on them. We have to continue to engage with them. And we are, in addition to that, I think over the next few days, we will be working, we have been, and we introduced a motion last week that deals with the revitalization of the median, right? Making sure that we are, what's been happening over the last few years on that median. Obviously, we've seen just walking, right, myself, there's needles, there's a lot of stuff that's on the floor. So it needs a lot of TLC. And there are a lot of, I think, broken irrigation. Anyway, there's a lot of work that needs to get done to the median. So the council member is using some of our discretional dollars to make sure that we're kind of revitalizing that median so we can get it back up to snuff so that it can once again be used for that. And so I think you guys will be hearing more about that over the next few weeks, about the next steps in terms of the median. But yes, we're good. We're really excited. The council member is really proud. Like, shout out to Julio and Susie and the El Sereno team who have been out there like daily for weeks to try to work with these folks and get them housed. And we've been really successful, and it's been really exciting.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for all that information. Anything else that you would like to add for the results of the survey? And also interpretation, I forgot to mention to our panelists to speak slowly for interpretation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I was near the end, sorry, I apologize for that, Edgar, sorry. But yeah, anything else that you would touch upon? I know some, the biggest concerns is the unhoused population, and yeah, I don't know if you, I think you touched on it, but anything else?
I'm sorry, I'm a fast talker naturally, so I'll slow down. So I would say, just to add a little bit more, for the council member, homelessness has been since the beginning his #1 priority, because it's, our district, and it's kind of a shameful statistic, but it's a real statistic, has more unhoused people than like the city of Chicago, and actually most major cities in the United States. And it is not something that we say kind of proudly, but it is something that we take seriously. And it's something that he has taken seriously from the beginning. And so, in January, he introduced a series of 9 motions in a package called A Way Home that included a lot of work around setting goals for the city, right? Over the last year, we've seen the city build way more housing than it ever has before for the unhoused community because of a lawsuit, right? And so imagine what we could do if the city kind of set concrete goals and put the funding behind it. And so the council member, as a member of the budget committee, which is happening kind of in real time, one of the 5 members deciding what to do with the budget that is before us in these extraordinary times, what he's prioritizing, making sure that funding for housing for our unhoused community is a priority, but not just earmarking dollars and then not knowing what happens to them, right? So a big part of his motion was moving along to set a goal of 25,000 units by 2025 across the city, to ensure that we have the amount of beds available so that we can offer housing to our folks that are living on the streets throughout the city. And that is I think a huge issue, and something that is our priority that we have been working so far. I think we have had 7 of our 9 motions adopted, and so we are working on the last 2. So we will continue to work on that over the next few months. But like I said, I think you can look forward to hearing a lot more from the council member on the issue of homelessness from our staff. We will continue to work on creating targeted plans for the area by the railroad, by the railroad tracks, and other parts of El Sereno, to ensure that we are slowly but surely offering housing to those experiencing homelessness in El Sereno. And I'm hoping that you guys, I think, soon continue to see like a market difference in the way that your community looks, and go back to a place where you continue to have that pride that you guys all have for El Sereno. And that's our goal. That's something that we are hoping that we you guys are noticing that we're prioritizing. And like I said, anything that you guys need just for closing, or suggestions that you have, we're all ears. We're happy to help, and we're happy to listen and see what we can do to kind of make things happen for you guys. I know there was a lack of representation for a bit, and so we're trying to get caught up and deal with the backlogs and kind of move forward all at the same time. So anyway, I feel like I've been talking for a while, but appreciate the time.
We appreciate all the information, and looking at the chat, yes, residents have noticed a difference in the median. in regards to the houseless population. So we applaud those efforts. We thank you for being here. Julio and Susie, who are local field deputies here. Thank you for your work. We look forward in continuing to see improvements, improving the quality of life here in El Sereno. And we're hoping that today is just, a starting point to continue, dialogue, to continue communication, and, just bridging the different resources that we have. I just learned, from David Galaviz that they also help out, they have services with to help out with the houseless population. So, that would be great to coordinate all those different services and resources that we have. LAUSD has been doing great in providing services for our students, and we just want to continue to work together, uplift El Sereno, and improving the quality of life for all ages and people. So I thank you, Jennifer. I thank all of our panelists, all of our attendees who are here today. We're almost done. I'm going to pass it on to JMO, who will be announcing winners of the folks who filled out the survey. Thank you, everyone.
All right, awesome. So Anna, you'll stop sharing your screen in a bit, but we just wanted to recap in terms of like what are the next steps, which I'll go over right now. So this is being recorded. We hope to upload it to our YouTube immediately after this, because we know a lot of folks couldn't be here and a lot of information was shared. And also this is really good data for distribution that folks could use to advocate for El Sereno, to advocate for our communities. And like Yoli said, this is a glimpse. We know that this survey was distributed during the second wave in El Sereno. All of us here are volunteers. We all love El Sereno, and this was in the good intentions of capturing some impacts of what was happening to our community throughout the pandemic. We recognize that we are now in a reopening phase, and a lot of these results can guide our reopening paths, can guide our resources, can guide our coming together as El Sereno. And we are an informal partnership. We got together and we're just really excited to work with each other. And yeah, we're not a formal coalition. Like I said, we're all volunteers that love El Sereno, and we welcome folks to engage with us. We are your neighbors, we are your local businesses. And our main intention was exactly in our title in the beginning, to uplift El Sereno, for all of us to come together as a community, to not be divisive or fight or call out each other, but really to call in each other, really to have each other's backs. What we saw from the data is that we do want to support each other, and we have ideas in how to do that. So really excited about these next steps in terms of what conversations come out after today's town hall.